Hey everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and this is a video overview of this knife. And this knife is the SOG Kiku XR LTE. And so this represents one of the higher end knives in the SOG lineup right now. And it's nice to compare it to what I think is one of the better EDC knives out there, which is this knife. And this knife is the SOG Terminus XR LTE. So let's talk about a little bit about what the letters mean, and then I'll get into the specs and what I like and don't like about the SOG Kiku XR LTE. So XR stands for this. This is the lock, the XR lock. And this has been in the SOG lineup for a couple of years now. It functions exactly like a Benchmade axis lock, even if I think it works slightly differently, I'm not sure. But the LTE part is an interesting thing that SOG has done in the 2021 lineup. And it is the inclusion, and let's see if we can see it here, the inclusion of structural carbon fiber. So while a lot of knives out there have metal liners, stainless steel liners, the liners on the LTE knives are all structural carbon fiber. And that simply means that they're using carbon fiber for its original intended purpose. See if you can see it there. It actually carries out and makes the lanyard hole here. And that is to make something stronger and lighter at the same time. So it's interesting that the knife industry has taken so long to use carbon fiber and structural elements, but SOG is really leveraging this by making all of their knives with this, all these high-end knives with their carbon fiber liners, and the end result is really nice knives that are pretty light. So let's talk a little bit about the specs. So this is a knife, and it's designed by, I think it's Matsuda Kiku, and he has done a bunch of collaborations with SOG, and they all have these very sort of rough-hewn, organic feel to them. All of his knives do, including his fixed blade, which is actually a very good fixed blade. This knife here has micarta scales on the outside, and you can get them in orange or black. And this one came to me, it's a review sample, it came in black. The other thing that this knife has is that it has an XHP blade. Now, SOG is starting to move away from the low end of the knife range, and in doing so, they've tried to incorporate better blade steels. And this is probably the best blade steel you can get on a SOG right now. XHP is not a brand new steel, but for whatever reason, it started out like gangbusters, then had a lot of availability, and now it's sort of trickled down to a much lower level of availability. So the CTS-XHP steel is one of my favorite steels. It was originally built as a combination between 440C, the stainlessness of 440C, and the hardness of D2, and I have found that to be pretty accurate and correct. The other thing that this knife has is it has a 3.02 inch blade, and you can see here, let's see, can I get it? There you go. You can see that this knife has a compound grind. And that's a really interesting thing that we'll get to in a minute. Overall, the knife weighs right around 4 ounces, 4.1 ounces. And this is a really expensive knife. The MSRP is $249. You can usually find it for $229 on any of your favorite knife retail websites. The knife, as you can tell, is obviously a flipper, but you can also open it. Well, I can't do it from around the camera, but you can definitely open it with a thumb, and if you have a little more practice, you can open it with a finger flick. The flipper here rides on bearings. You can see them down in there. Maybe not, but they're down in there. And as I said before, it uses the XR lock. So let's talk a little bit about what I like. So the first thing that I really like is I like the look of this folder. I'm not a particularly huge fan of this sort of like rough-hewn look, but it really does suit this design quite well. It's a thick, or it's a tall, it's actually not that thick. It's a tall knife, and it sort of has that like, pounded or hammered look. Everything has a texture to it. Everything has a curve or an angle to it. And the end result is this is a very unique looking knife. Think about it as like the Spyderco Techno with a bit more character. So I do like that. It may not be my favorite design aesthetic, but I like the fact that it has a clear design aesthetic like all the Kiku design knives do. The other thing is it's actually pretty good in the hand. The jimping up here is a little sharp, and that's something I'll get to in a second. But down here on this part of the knife, you get a ton of grip. And Kiku's knives have always been pretty good at giving you grip. He really does make handles that work for the hand. The other thing that's nice is this really flat, sort of out of the way, discreet pocket clip just folds right into the crease in your hand. Well, I don't have a simian crease, but this crease right here in your hand. And the end result is it just sort of disappears. So I like the grip on the knife. The action is okay, although I have talked to SOG and they have confirmed that, you know, one of the issues is when you do the carbon fiber liners, sometimes you can get it to roll a little bit weird as it opens because it's just ball bearings on carbon. As you can see, there is a little smidge of blade play, which is probably why it's flipping like crazy. But on the other knife that I got in for review, the XRT or the XR LTE Terminus, that knife flips really well and there's absolutely no blade play on it. So the things that I don't like, I can tell you pretty straightforwardly. The jimping here is too aggressive, and the edge of the carbon fiber inside here, especially where this jimping is really aggressive. I mean, this is like, you could easily shred, let's see, this is a piece of cork. I mean, you can go right, I could saw right through this. I mean, as you can see, it got caught up in the teeth on the jimping. It's just too sharp. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is I'm not a huge fan of compound grinds, especially tanto. This is sort of a tanto because it has an extra point right here. That just makes the knife really hard to sharpen. And I do like sharpening my own knives. And my fear is that there's probably no way for a home user to sharpen this knife without taking an enormous amount of time and still preserving that secondary point. The other thing is, having this be like a flat grind and this be a hollow grind, that is a really nice feature, but I just don't think that it's worth the hassle. I'd much prefer to have a simpler knife, a simpler grind, and have it be more user serviceable than having it be, you know, something that's going to take a lot of skill and effort to keep independent. You know, like eventually this is just going to curve in. The other thing I don't like about this knife, and it's pretty obvious from just looking at it, you can tell, this is a really pronounced hollow grind, or I'm sorry, recurve. And so you're dealing with a change in angle, a change in a grind angle here. You're dealing with a compound grind and a recurve grind. This knife is going to be a giant pain in the butt to A, sharpen, and B, keep as it was from the factory. And so that's not my favorite thing. I do like the idea that SOG is doing more complex grinds. They've always done a great job on their grinds. And so having a more complex grind, if it was more user serviceable, I'd be fine with. But this is just going to be an absolute nightmare to maintain. So not a huge fan of that. The other thing that I'm not sure about is I don't like these clips where you have to have two clips come with the knife. You can't flip this around because it's like the old cold steel clips. You need two. I don't like that. I think it should be one clip, though. This clip design is really nice. Like I said, it just disappears in your hand. This is in for review. This has already been reviewed. I gave this one a really good score. So when you get a chance, take a look at the SOG Kiku XR LTE, and a full written review will be coming soon.